Good afternoon, folks. My name is Adrian Swinson. I, along with Jackie Fakahua, will be moderating this breakout session. This session is entitled Defining, Redefining a Pacific Island Warrior. It is being presented by the men of KAVA.
Good morning, everybody. In this session, our panel will be Simi, Poteki, Oscar Fakahua, Seni, Penitani, Toelupe, Lutui, and Robert Toelupe.
Hello, my name is Simi Poteki, and I'm the co-founder of KAVA. Knowledge about violence always. That began in 2015. A men's support group that meets weekly online, focused on being the best version of ourselves and eliminating violence from the inside out. I work in Tongan and most Pacific Islander languages for warrior is Toa. That's what I terminating for warrior Toa. But it's not really a true translation. Toa is also the name of the strongest wood in our island, the ironwood tree. Anyone can be a warrior, but a Toa is one step above. A Toa is someone that can stand alone for the truth. Never waver, even if he stands alone, somebody that has compassion, love, and has forgiveness in his heart. A Toa is someone who stands up for everyone's right, especially for women and children. A Toa does not abuse anyone. He only fights for the rights of everyone. A Toa or a Toa tree will stand alone, and over time becomes like iron, becomes steel. Most trees don't do that. That's why we call that a Toa. Now, that's my version of Toa, and I'm sure that everybody else has their own version, but that's mine. Now, I'm really happy to turn the time over to my nephew, Oscar Fakahua. He knows better than me.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Oscar. It's good to be on here with all of you. So, since Simi explained, my uncle Simi explained to you what a warrior is in Tonga and the step above, I guess the definition totally fits my uncle, right? Because as a Toa, he decided that he would go ahead and stand up and do something different from the way that he himself used to be, right? Where he was a pretty violent man at one point. And though this is not about Simi, it's a good example to kind of share that he went through a lot of things in his own life. And at some point, found himself being strong enough and courageous enough to do something different. And so KAVA Talks come to life. And here we are as men coming together to share with you some of our stories and some of the things that we believe is going to help all of us men that are out there listening how to become a Toa, or how to redefine being a warrior, right? So we one evening in KAVA Talks sat and we had a discussion about what is a warrior today? What is it that we offer? And each of the brothers that are sitting here and some that are on your video camera will share a little bit of their story with you about what the warrior is, what we were and what we are today, and what we continue to evolve to be, right? Because the warrior is totally different for everybody now. So, we share a little bit about it.
I've been assigned to share about gender roles among men in the Pacific and how it can relate to domestic violence. But at the outset, I'd like to give a little bit of context where I'll be talking about this moment. I'd like to make this claim. this outrageous claim that most of us men in the Pacific, including me, have a Will Smith syndrome. And here's why. Last year, Will Smith had his autobiography, his memoir, entitled Will. And here's the story behind Will Smith that most of us are not aware of. In chapter 1 of his book, entitled Will, here's the story behind Will. When I was 9 years old, I watched my father punch my mother in the side of their head so hard that she collapsed. I saw her spit blood. That moment in that room, probably more than any other moment in my life, has defined who I am. Within everything that I have done since then, the awards, the accolades, the spotlights, and the attention, the characters, and the laughs, there has been a subtle string of apologies to my mother for my inaction that day, for failing her in her moment, for failing to stand up to my father, for being a coward. Why I bring this because I want to bring this to domestic violence. Many of us men are being hurt and we have emotional scars, leave unattended or unattended too. We have scars inside us, and many of us live in denial, or some of us are unaware of those emotional scars that we carry for years. Because on that night, the 9-year-old who was unable to protect his mom came alive. He was triggered. And I think many of us men in that context, now when it comes to gender roles, we tend to define ourselves. He went on in this Will Smith. This book just came out last year, but it's like a setting of what had happened this year. And when I look at it, and I look at it as men, many of us have emotional scars, and I'm one of those. And partly because in the Pacific, when it comes to parenting, beating our kids it's really normal. We beat our kids, and what some of the arguments that came about when I bring the topic of domestic violence in the Town Church, he said, look, I have been beaten, and look am I today. But here is the deeper issue. We are not aware of biosocial, the psychologists are aware of biosocial theory, meaning all of us are partially shaped by our biology, and and also our social environment. Now, if there is a tongue, and when we talk about men in the tongue setting or Pacific Island setting, many of us have been beaten, and some of us it's okay. But there are so many of us that beating can lead to scars that leave unattended, and we are like Will Smith. It emerges when you come to marriage. Now, I have been a Mr. Mom for so many years. I came to U.S. straight to New York, went to school there, and when I came, I married up. I married someone who was able to provide for a family financially, and I was the one who take care of the kids. I found it, taking care of the kids, it's hard work. And for us in the Pacific Islands, we confine ourselves to go fishing, gardening, and when it comes to parenting, it's something for women only. We say our toughness is related to the work we do, and we define ourselves as warriors is how many taro we plant, and then or how many yam, or how many fish we go talking about fishing, and then when it comes to parenting, we are quiet. But here's the thing that I read recently. A psychologist, a Jewish psychologist, his name is Claire Rabin. Here's a book, and this psychologist found this out. He found this: men and women, husband and wife, or couples who work together, sharing the chores at home, it leads to that they are more fulfilled. The women are more fulfilled. So when it comes to bedtime, the women are more receptive. And part of this because sex, when we talk about sex, they are emotionally in tune to that. Now, if you're a man, you just confine yourself to intermartial, going fishing, going earn the money, and you come back home and you expect that from a woman who is already dead from taking care of the kids, and you won't receive what you think you should. And now it become sexual violence in the bedroom between husband and wife, and the ripple effects it's uncountable. I think I'll end there, but here's the only thing I would like to remind us. Men, if you have some emotional scars like Will Smith, better attend to it, because on that night, perhaps Will Smith could, when that comment hurt his wife, the 9-year-old still not yet healed, he could have told his wife, hey, let's leave this event. It's better for us to leave. But instead of that little child. So when we talk about warriors, many of us, we go whether playing football or try to mask ourselves, all those accomplishments. I'd like to remind you, attend to those small child inside that still crying there. So as women, I hope you will be attentive to those little things about us men and see how we can start the healing. There's a word for us in the KAVA talk about being healed emotionally. And part of healing is the conversation that we have. When we talk about it, acknowledge it, aware of it, that's where the solutions start to come in. So I will end there.
So I'm just going to jump in real quick before we give a moment to Sam Lutui, who's with us. But I just want to say, a lot of times those emotional scars or traumas that we've had in our lives, they will appear. We may think that we can just push them aside or pretend like they're not there, but they will appear when it's time for it to appear, right? No different than when Will Smith slaps Chris Rock. It's all about because something happened at that moment. Now, I don't know anything that's happened in that situation, but I do know this. A lot of times when we've had trauma in our lives, us men, and it's not only Polynesian men, but it happens a lot in us men. Our emotions, when our emotion rises, right, we react to our emotion. And when we react, right, then a lot of times the warrior in us appears, and that's when we become violent. We have to learn how to not react, right, but to figure out, okay, so what's a different way to handle this, which would be to respond to something rather than reacting. And so I know our time is limited, so I want to turn some time to Sam. Is there anything else you need to say, or do we just go straight to Sam? All right. You good? Yeah. You want me to do that? What's that? What's on you? If you just wanted to say something, you can. If not,
yeah, before we turn the time over to Sam, I just like to take the time to say a few words about being a warrior and what it means to be. And Susie specifically, I wanted to talk about one of the attributes of a warrior, which is courage and bravery, and what that looks like as a South Pacific man, and the stuff the struggles that we go through in this, trying to adapt to what society's view of what a Polynesian man is, the stigmas that come with Polynesian man. You hear it a lot. We're either, you see us, we're either wrestlers, we're athletes, or we're known for, for violence, for hitting our women. And so a lot of us young men are looking at these stereotypes that are connected to our men. And so we have to try and redefine what a warrior is for us, because like Oscar said earlier, a lot of us grow up in this, as a Polynesian man, that's what we are, we're warriors, we're fighters. We get picked on the football team right away, right? And then when it comes to fighting, don't nobody want to fight us. We grow up with this mentality of being a tough guy. and we pass these traits on to our little brothers and our siblings, and we pass on, and we continue these generational curses. And for me, I was raised in an environment of gang culture. And for me, I thought that's what a warrior was. So I had no time to be a loving warrior, because in the space of gang violence, in a space like that, you're forced to be a different kind of warrior. And so all your faces is anger and all these, and you don't know how to communicate that you're hurt, or that you have anxiety, and that you're trying to deal with these cultural changes living in a new country like America, and you don't know how to communicate these emotions. And so you just turn back to what you normally, how you were raised: be tough, don't be vulnerable. And then you pass these traits on to our younger siblings. And for me, I passed this on to my young brother. And my young brother, I was the only mentor he had in life. And so I was that brother that told him, you're gonna handle your business. You're not gonna back down from nothing. Because I thought that's what a warrior was. And eventually my brother grew up with that mentality, and never knowing any other way to handle his business. And on the day he died, he was gunned down in broad daylight by men who started a fight. And my brother reacted the only way he knew how. He had no way of communicating that. I don't know what this is, I don't want no trouble. Instead, he reached back to his upbringing. Oh, Big Bro, this is how Big Bro gonna handle it. Because he's seen Big Bro in that same setting run up on somebody and violently attack someone. And so he felt, okay, so this is how my brother's gonna handle it, this is how I'm gonna handle it. Except this man had a gun. And at that point, my brother didn't know how to handle that situation. The only way he knew how to handle it, he had no tools in his toolbox to handle this. All he knew was the warrior way that his older brother taught him. His brother, handle your business. So what does my brother do? He doesn't back down, because his brother says, you're not backing down. Not from anyone, even from a gun. And my brother lost his life that day. And that day just took my breath away. And that day was the day I realized that everything that I taught him, I spent the rest of the time blaming myself. And it wasn't until I started to take accountability and realize that what I was doing was continuing these generational curses. And I started to meet people like Simi and Susie. And I started meeting the Gogi lifers like Coach James. And these safe spaces that allow me to be vulnerable and allow me to share my pain, and they gave me these life tools for how to handle it and make these positive decisions. And so now with these tools, I'm able to be vulnerable, tell my story, to help someone. And now as a warrior, I redefine the warrior different. And now when I look back at what a warrior was, I look at my dad, and I look about, and he was what courage was to me, and I didn't know until he was gone from my life. And here's a man that left his island. My dad could have been an engineer. He could have worked for NASA. This is how smart my father was. This man left his island, the security he had in the island, came out here, learned a new language, went to work in a machine shop, walked to work for 45 minutes, walked back home 45 minutes every day, saved his money 15 months, brought my mom and my siblings over in this new country to get a new life. And every day I watched this man I'm so grateful for my dad's example of courage. I didn't know that was courage though. I thought that was sucker. I thought he was a sucker. You know, my dad, I never seen my dad lay a hand on my mother. I've never seen him raise his voice. And at the moments when my mom would get in his face, and you know, as a Polynesian woman, they're very passionate. And I never seen my dad ever lay a hand on her. He would just, and seeing that, and I would just look and have so much respect for my father. And I'm so grateful that I had that example of a man who was courageous enough. And my dad walked a life like he didn't care what you thought. When people talked to him, he was a humble man, but was very smart in his thinking, and the way he treated us kids, it's something that I think of. That was a warrior to me. And so when I'm trying to make these changes in these young people, and I'm trying to tell young people about what it takes to be a courage, I tell them to look at your parents and look at the examples that your parents have given you. And so to me, I look at being a warrior now, and it's about inspiring others. It's about helping others. It's about telling young people to walk away from certain situations that don't benefit you. And it's about prioritizing your warrior, the warrior in you, knowing when that warrior comes out. And so with that, I just want to thank you, Oscar, for this time, and thank you for the time that I can share this life story, and hope that it helps someone.
So as we go to Sam, I just want you to please recognize, there's different warriors that are sitting here, and you're about to hear from Sam Lutui. And then we'll take it to our therapist to share with us about what it is that we need to prepare for. But you heard a warrior here talking about how he was brought up, and also talked about how he became, the mom. He stayed home, he raised his kids, right? And then we come over to a whole different area where we're talking about somebody that was involved in gangs and had to redefine what is it. And he had to redefine himself because of losing his brother off of something that he had taught that he firmly believed, but didn't know that there was any other way. Right? So as you're listening out there, I want you to pay attention to the different stories, because I promise you, it will bless your life. And those of you that are listening, KAVA Talks is open to all people, so make sure you tune in, man. Sam, would like to hear from you, Sam.
Greetings to everyone. My love and appreciation for this platform, and for all those that made this opportunity happen. And I'm grateful to listen to all these stories and all these perspectives. To me, talking about warrior, one thing that it's always associated with being a warrior is toughness and courage. And I loved what the gentleman just mentioned about how he came a full circle to, or not a full circle, but a 180 to realize the meaning of the warrior is looking in his father and what he has done. And so courage becomes a great thing to be associated with being a warrior. But I look at the most renowned warriors in our history and even our times, or I don't think any of them it's not because they're not afraid. I think everyone has fear, and the true courage is really having fear but going through it anyway. And what I've realized in my my times and what I've gone through is really the the epitome of being a warrior is having the courage to go through things that are tough anyway, to get up in the morning and go to work anyway, knowing that you don't have much, but you got to keep going, knowing that things are tough, that you have very little, you share anyway. And in those days, our in our island life, conquering other islands and fighting off your enemies and having the ability and the knowledge to go out there and defend yourself uh, and defend your family and using all the skills that you have learned. Like if you look at the most courageous people in history, some we may not call warriors, but they have done far and beyond and going beyond their fears and courage to conquer things. You look at Charles Lindbergh, Emily Earnhardt, you know, the ones that traveled to the moon, are those warriors, even though they didn't have other humans to fight against, but they fought the elements, they fought the misinformation, of self-determination, is that a true warrior to be able to fight off the negativity around you and to keep going forward regardless of what happened to you? Is that being a warrior to you get up and keep working and keep fighting for what you believe in, regardless of finances, regardless of the turmoils in life, regardless of all the bad things that happen to your life, you know? And I define it and I look at it, what makes a warrior is really somebody, it's not that the warriors are afraid to they're not afraid to die, is that they're not afraid to die for what they believe in. And the gentleman is talking about his dad, I think a lot of us will recognize that in our own stories of our fathers leaving the island, buying a one-way ticket to America, and then slowly working to bring their families. And they were willing to do that. They were, it's not that they were afraid, but they weren't afraid to die for what they believe in. So that's a true warrior. And then so if we believe, like he's talking about the gangs, that's what they believed in. That's why they died for doing what they did. And as stupid as it was, some people would look at it, but they had a belief in that little whatever value system that they had, that somebody made them feel a certain way and believed a certain way, and they were willing to put their life for it. However, uh, you know, people look at it as, gangs are such a horrible thing, but those people, their actions that may seem heroic as going to fight anybody, no matter what, no matter if they had a knife or a gun, that courage is built upon that knowledge of what they believe, and in their belief system is that this are my brothers, and this is who I would die for. This is what I would give. And our parents and a lot of people in the islands, they've gone through that. Go leave a small island, go to a foreign country, learn a different language, learn a different trade, walk 45 minutes to work, walk longer than whatever, and do that and go through that suffering because there's a cause that they believed in. So what they knew and what they believed made them feel a certain way, and that's why they act the way they did. And that's a true warrior. But I guess in any measurement that you would measure in life, it really comes down to that. What is that do I know, and what do I believe in? And am I willing to give my life for that? A lot of us right now are going through this stuff, this platform. We come together because there's a certain belief in us that we need to be better. Is a true warrior is be able to overcome their weaknesses, overcome the mistakes and the fallacies and the misinformation that we lived upon. Are we willing to be the true warriors and be like our ancestors and overcome those things and conquer? We don't have lands to conquer. We don't have minds to conquer. We conquer our own minds, and we conquer our own weaknesses and know our own situation to keep fighting and keep moving forward. Then I think that's a true sign of what a warrior is. There's a lot of great women out there who are warriors, true warriors. I think that the more courageous warriors that are moms and what they have done with their families, that not attributed to that, because you're always looking at the masculinity of what a warrior is. But there's a lot of females out there, a lot of moms and sisters and aunties that can fit that same description of what a warrior truly is. Much
Sam,
love to you guys. Thank you for having me.
thank you, Sam. So we have about 15 minutes left, everybody, but we want to give about 10 minutes to Robert. He's our LCSW that's always in our group. He always gives us some amazing feedback, and we're grateful to have him here with us. Robert, you got about 10 minutes, brother.
All right, sure. I'll try to keep that as brief as possible. But I enjoy this this process of trying to redefine what a warrior is. Yeah, and so I just want to contribute a couple of things to consider when redefining the definition of what a warrior is. And one, a warrior must understand the difference between wartime and at peace. Yeah. There's a difference on how a warrior needs to respond during peacetime and during wartime. Also, a warrior must understand the different, terrain or environment that he's in, and I'll address that a little bit more after. But you engage differently depending on the environment that you're in, and a warrior must be aware of that. And third, a warrior, because a warrior is prone to trauma just because of the nature of being a warrior. It's very important for a warrior to be educated on what trauma is and how trauma can manifest itself in an individual. So just wanted to contribute that, with this ongoing discussion about redefining what a warrior is, but that is very important when trying to deal with this issue. I was asked on how can a warrior embrace a mental health wellness or engage in therapy, my first either for him or his family or even children, and I know a lot of times there's the stigma about what therapy is, but I just want to keep it just explain what therapy is first. Therapy is just a process. It's just a process of being able to explore one's thoughts, one's emotions, and how it impacts that individual, and how it affects that individual in the environment that he's in. So there's only really two things that we do in therapy. One is just to increase self-awareness. That's the first thing that we do in therapy, just work on just increasing self-awareness. And the second thing is we just try to teach skills to help the individual, to deal with whatever challenges that they're facing. And so the reason why I mentioned this is because therapy is just a process, and wherever you can engage in that process, right? Therapy is one place where you can engage in that process. But when you understand the therapeutic process and you try to see where else do you engage in that process, right? In support groups, you can engage in that process. If you develop skills where you can learn to engage in that process with your spouse or with family. But the main thing is a lot of times people put a lot of emphasis on therapy instead of on the therapeutic process. There's some things that you can engage in that might be part of the therapeutic process, but the more you recognize that you're engaging in this process, then the more success you'll find in managing your challenges. A lot of therapists they they promote themselves in a sense sometimes where it's, they're responsible for your success or for whatever, you know, the work that you do, instead of emphasizing on it's the process that helps you to find that success. Because a lot of times, people will be like, well, this person helped me, or if it wasn't for this person, I wouldn't be able to, to find help, instead of understanding that it wasn't necessarily that person, but it was the process that you engaged with, and that person helped to facilitate. And anytime you engage in that process with anybody else or in any other environment, then that is what the emphasis should be. So I just wanted, with the limited time that I have, just wanted to emphasize more on just understanding when you educate yourself and understand what the therapeutic process is. Therapy, the therapy room is one avenue where you can engage in that process, but there's a lot of other avenues where you can engage in that process and be successful in being able to understand how you are, as how individuals are as warriors, and how the belief system and being a warrior can affect their quality of life. So thank you guys for the opportunity.
Robert, thank you so much for sharing. Everybody, our time is, man, that time flew by like that. But I just want to close with this. There's a lot of forms of things that are therapeutic. Going for a walk, spending time talking with people that you love. Go to church, spend time talking with God. As you see our brothers sitting here, all of us sitting here sharing with you that are listening out there. Each and every one of us have our own story. My uncle has a story that's an amazing story. I think these two have a lot in common, right? Just one that's really old and one that's pretty young. But their stories kind of fit each other. I think Seni might come from the same type of thing. I was born and raised here in America. I didn't get to see a lot of things other than I did see gang violence. Other than that, I got to go back to Toelupe and learn some things. My brothers out there that are listening, your challenge is, number one, to embrace who you are. And then don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is what allows us to heal. It's what allows us to come together. You saw it from my man today, right? He shared about something that he probably still carries, even though he's in a lot better place. Because in his mind, if I would have known what I know today, my little brother would be sitting next to me. But he didn't know any better. So how many of you out there don't know any better? How many of you out there are just doing the best you can because that's just what you know? Well, I'll tell you something. When we talked about a warrior, the warrior that used to lead this group is no longer with us. And we want him to know that we love him, though he's listening from the other side of the veil. Paul, thank you. Thank you for allowing this group to continue to grow. And for all of those that are listening, please join us. It's been a pleasure sitting here talking with you. We're grateful to be able to share our stories a little bit with you. Thank you to Robert and to Sam for joining us. Have a great day, everybody. Peace out. Are there any questions? Do you have any questions out there that you might want to ask?
I'll read it to you.
Please.
One of the questions that we have is, though this might be obvious, what is the difference between reacting versus responding through the lens of civic amendment?
The difference between reacting and responding through our eyes.
Well, for me, reacting, I've been blessed with, like, the past few years I've been in support groups, and I think the Gogi Lifers group, and I'm going to speak on that later on today about a life tool that I've been able to use called the Boss of My Brain, and that has helped me be able to react, because I realize what part of my brain is doing the thinking. And once I realize that and identify that, I'm able to weave my way and make positive decisions. So I think when it comes to reacting now, it's all about information and learning. So once you learn how to, once you realize what part of the brain is working, then you can answer and react a certain way, I guess.
Can I add to that? That's I'll just put in other terms, but that's exactly right. The answer, but reaction is a kind of an automatic response where when you respond, you're making a conscious decision on your response. So a response can be negative as well, right? You can choose to, but it's just understanding the difference between one being compelled or kind of having like no control, and then one making a conscious decision. And so we want to learn how we react, and also want to learn that we can have control in how we respond. So that's what I would add.
Thank you.
In dialectical behavior therapy, they define reacting is you are functioning from an emotional mind. They have emotional mind, rational mind, and wise mind. It's bringing together the two. So when you are reacting, your emotional mind is taking over. And as Pacific Island, then I go back to, if you are unaware, you have some emotional scars. You can react to life through a 9-year-old like Will Smith. You have some scars from the past that will come through. When you react to something very minute, or we say stupid, but yeah, as men, I'm big in trying, then be aware if you have some issue in the past, deal with it, or seek some professional help. That can lead us to be better when we, instead of reacting, but be wise and be purposeful when we handle difficult situations.
And I'm sorry, I just want to say, like, support groups, like, I'm big on this. And, like, I think for me, just being able to have a space like Gogi, like KAVA Talks. So if you're looking, if you're struggling for answers and things like that, I'm telling you, reach out to your friends and reach out to people that can help. These support groups have been amazing for me. So that's another way we can help ourselves heal and grow and learn.
So I just want to add to that. The other night, I believe it was Monday night, I was looking at something on my Facebook and saw a gentleman from back in the islands of Hawaii. They were at some kind of a dance. And at this dance, an older lady, now you have to understand, Polynesian women always dance by themselves. When the music goes, they're all on the floor dancing. And this lady, who's older, dances past this gentleman, and as she's dancing past him, she doesn't do anything to him, but he turns around and gives her an elbow in the back, right? Now, as I'm watching that, the lady didn't react. She just kind of laughed and just kind of passed him. And then I believe she felt like it felt a little bit violent and was wondering what's going on because she had no idea. So she kind of went back, and when she looked at the gentleman, he literally turned, and right there in the middle of the dance, punched her right in the face. Now, that situation to me is exactly what Seni's talking about. What he's talking about is what might have happened with that gentleman? What's going through his mind? What made him react that way, right? Or in the negative, what made him respond that way? Who knows, right? But in my thoughts, when I saw this clip, it hit me that sometimes we react and our emotion is something from the past. Because that gentleman, she wasn't even dancing next to him. He made his way over to make this happen, right? And out of reactions, I've never seen a Tongan man in the middle of something so happy turn and punch somebody in the face, especially a female. So it was a very interesting thing to me. But that right there in that situation hits me like there had to have been some kind of trauma that happened between this gentleman and somebody. And maybe Robert, you can share a little bit what you think about this story. But it was kind of an interesting thing because that's what we're trying to define as warriors, right?
Yeah.
There are certain things.
Yeah, that may very well be an aspect, some type of trauma, but the other aspect that we didn't really, I wanted to touch on, but didn't really get to touch, but is the systems that we are in. Yeah, and one of the biggest systems that contributes to a lot of the violence that we experience and that we engage in is patriarchy. So I put a little video on just to and sometimes it's very hard for men to admit how patriarchy can contribute because of our culture is based on patriarchy. Even in church, right? Sometimes our religious beliefs are based on patriarchy, but it's not necessarily condemning patriarchy as a system, but in the patriarchal system, men are placed above women. And so in that system, or in any system where you have a disparity, there's always the opportunity for someone to abuse their power. And so when men learn to understand how the system of, or not I guess not just necessarily men, but when our society, our community understand how patriarchy places men above women, and going back to the story, how was it that a man could even engage in that behavior and nobody else responded, right? That's evident of the system that we're in, whether it was shocked or whether it was not, but we are all complicit in this system of patriarchy. And so there's a video that I put on. It's a documentary called "A Feminist in Cell Block Y," but it talks a lot about how these men in prison, they're learning about patriarchy and how it led them to prison, how it led them to the actions that they've done. So and in addition to trauma, there are other factors that maybe come to play, and one is the system, that how we've learned how to be what a man means, or what a warrior means, and how a warrior should be, all these misconceptions and myths about how we should behave and act as a man. So once we understand and break that down, it'll be easier for us to challenge those beliefs and correct those beliefs.
Robert, thank you so much. Is there any other questions? Oh, Simi?
Well, earlier I was thinking of that question. Reaction is a human behavior. Everybody has that. But responding, you can alter that with positive thinking, positive thought. We can work on our reaction. Give it a few minutes to think about it. Then go on from there. You probably make the right decision. But the first one is hard, because it is human reaction. I mean, reaction is, in all human, we react every time anything, anybody says anything. But you can teach yourself how to respond.
Folks, that's going to conclude this breakout session. On behalf of the Pacific Island Knowledge to Action Resources, we want to thank the men of KAVA Talks for speaking with us and sharing their experiences and their thoughts. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the chat and we will answer them later. Again, thanks so much for attending today. We appreciate it.